So much for joining. Sorry. Thank you so much for joining. Really excited to kick off Deferred MBA week and share a lot of great tips, strategies, resources to help you get into your dream Deferred MBA program. And we've got a great lineup of panelists tonight that will introduce themselves here shortly. If you haven't already, be sure to scan this QR code here and to sign up for Leland. That way we'll be sure to send over the recordings of the Deferred MBA week over to you. And we'll also be sharing other free resources that will help you through the application process. So welcome to Deferred MBA week. We're going to be covering a bunch of different topics this week: application strategy, resumes, letters of rec, essays, interviews. You're going to get access to different free resources like our application checklist, recommender prep docs, etc. And then you truly have the best admissions coaches that'll be joining these sessions to share their tips and advice. Many of them have been former AdCom members at the likes of Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, some of the top schools like that. Others have attended those institutions and have coached hundreds of people through the process. So it's going to be an awesome week, and we really appreciate you tuning in and would invite you to join each of the sessions this week. So here's the lineup. We've got a panel tonight, which is what you're on today. We're going to be doing an overview of application strategy, timeline, and tips. There's also an Ask Me Anything. Tomorrow, we're going to do a deep dive into the GMAT and GRE, help you put together your prep study plan. Hopefully, you've already started studying for one of those exams, but if you haven't, we're going to do some sessions tomorrow. As well as letters of rec, as well, and an overview on application essays. And then lastly, on Thursday, we'll be covering, we'll do like an office hours for the Stanford GSB. We'll do an overview of our MBA application, or our Deferred MBA application bootcamp, which will provide some details on that tonight. Highly recommend checking out that resource. It's a really good way to put together strong applications. And then lastly, we're going to have a workshop on how to differentiate yourself, given differentiating yourself through the deferred process is pretty important. Here's quick event logistics. Please ask questions in the chat. We've got great coaches. We also have Emma and Erica, who will be able to answer some questions in there. So please ask questions in the chat. Be sure to RSVP for each of the Deferred MBA week sessions that we'll be hosting this week. And then we're going to be doing several different giveaways, so be sure to apply to those. And then lastly, be sure to sign up for Leland to ensure that you get access to the event recordings for the week. And then quick agenda for tonight. We're going to do some quick introductions so you can get to know the panelists, myself and the panelists, as well as the ops people that are helping run this event and who planned it. And then we're going to do a quick overview of the Deferred MBA application. We'll do an expert panel, so we'll ask these great panelists questions and get their insights, and then we'll have a final word. So with that, we're going to dive into quick introductions. Quick note on myself: I'm Andrew. I've been running growth on the demand side at Leland for the last 3.5 years. Previously worked at LinkedIn in business operations. I applied to Deferred MBA programs in spring of 2020 and was admitted to Kellogg and MIT Sloan. I actually recently graduated from Kellogg in June. Loved my experience. Happy to chat with you guys about it or answer questions. But yeah, that's a quick background on myself. And then we have Erica, Amelia, and Emma, who have done a lot of work putting together this event and the events in this week, and we'll be running ops in the chat and answering questions and things. So big thanks to Erica, Amelia, and Emma for helping put this all together. Couldn't have done it without you. And then we've got some awesome panelists tonight. So I'm going to hand it over to Tim, if you don't mind introducing yourself first, and then we'll go with Jerry and then Ben to round us out. So over to you, Tim.
Sure. So welcome, everyone. Super excited to be with you tonight. So yeah, my name is Tim Fenton. little bit about my background. I started my career in finance at Goldman Sachs, and I got my MBA at Chicago Booth. I was also admitted into multiple M7 schools. While I was at Booth, I was an admissions fellow, so super involved in the admissions process while I was on campus. And then I have been supporting folks pretty much ever since. And tallied up, I've helped over 100 folks get into M7 programs. After I graduated from Booth, also worked at BCG. No longer there, but happy to have conversations about consulting recruiting, or consulting life. So super excited to be here.
Hi, everybody. I am Jerry Tovum. Thank you all for coming tonight. I hope you get a lot out of tonight and this whole week. As you can see, I'm former HBS AdCom, and I was there for about 8 years in the admissions office. I spent most of my career actually at Harvard Business School, kind of throughout the school, but loved my time there in admissions, saw thousands of applications and interviewed many hundreds of people. And my focus when I was there for most of the time was on the deferred program. So I was part of the team that co-founded the 2+2 program, and then I managed that sector for a period of years. So got to really kind of dig in deep and understand, I think, pretty well, what the schools are looking for when it comes to the deferred folks. Obviously, after Harvard did it, all the schools did it. So now I have a pretty good sense for, what the other schools are looking for as well. And been, loving since I left Harvard, been loving sort of doing this coaching, and this is my full-time job. And this is sort of my favorite time of year when I start to be able to work with clients who are, in college now or in master's programs and applying to the deferred programs. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. And yeah, hopefully we will maybe get to connect at some point. Enjoy the night.
Awesome, Jerry. Hey everybody, nice to meet all of you. Thanks for tuning in. Would always just encourage before we even dive in, like, to those of you that can throw your video on, that would be awesome. We love to just see faces. It also helps in building some familiarity maybe before an intro call. Background wise, grew up in the Queens area in New York. Went to WashU for undergrad, and then went to McKinsey afterwards. After McKinsey, I went to the Chicago mayor's office, did policy, speech writing, a smattering of things there, and then went to GSB for my MBA. After that, I worked a bit advising companies like Bain's Private Equity Group, a bunch of different startups. Have my own chess coaching startup, which is similar to Leland, but for chess. And I have been doing coaching a ton over the past couple of years, and really gotten a lot out of it. And honestly, didn't think I would even be doing coaching nearly as much as I am. And I think it's just an awesome way to help people think about whatever the next point is on their path. And it's something where I've seen that kind of work really drive me a lot in a lot of different spheres, from public, private sector, you name it. And it's cool to be able to help people figure out their next steps in the real world. So looking forward to tonight.
Awesome. Thanks for the intros. Again, you can see that these are three incredible individuals that have a ton of experience with the MBA admissions application and coaching process. These are three of our most sought after coaches as well. So they fill their books of business very, very quickly. So as you learn from them through this event, and if you have interest in working with them, Emma dropped each of their coaching profiles in the chat, and you can reach out to them or book time with them directly through their profiles. So anyways, we're super lucky to have them tonight. And yeah, thanks for the quick intros. But yeah, would love to get to know the audience. So you already dropped in where you're dialing in from. For those of you that are joining late, feel free to do the same. But would love to understand where you're working or studying, and then also what's your dream MBA program. So yeah, go ahead and drop it in the chat. Would love to see it. Penn State, Harvard, and Penn or Wharton. Good job. Cool. Let's see. Utah, Bain, Wharton. Cool. Harvard, GSB, Wharton. Awesome. Cool. Yeah, quite a bit of diversity. A lot of the M7 programs, several outside of the M7. So this is great. Thanks for sharing. And yeah, keep it coming. Would love to continue to get a read, and helpful for our panelists to see your background and where your interests lie as well. Anyways, quick overview on Leland. Leland is the one-stop shop to help people break into the most competitive career paths in schools in the world. Our most popular offerings, one-on-one coaching, so you can hire an expert like Ben, Jerry, Tim, or others to work with them one-on-one, and they will coach or mentor you on whatever it is you're seeking to do. Get a new job, apply to deferred MBA programs, tutoring for the GMAT or GRE. That is our most popular product or offering on our website. We also do live cohort-based courses. So we'll talk some about our deferred MBA bootcamp that we'll be running. They're live 60 to 90-minute sessions covering specific topics. So we've done like how to break into product management, investment banking. And as I mentioned, we'll be doing a deferred MBA bootcamp in the new year. And then we do a ton of free community events like the one that we're doing tonight. So appreciate you joining and tuning in, and yeah, be on the lookout for more events in the future, for more insights from our professionals. And then, yeah, in terms of the Deferred MBA Bootcamp, it's 8 live sessions. We're going to be covering every aspect of the Deferred MBA application process, from application strategy to essays to letters of rec to interview prep to office hours for the M7 programs. We'll do essay deep dives. And we're going to have phenomenal coaches of the caliber of Tim and Ben and Jerry that'll be teaching each of those sessions. The dates are January 13th to February 5th. And it's going to be 2 sessions per week through the duration of those 4 weeks. And we're doing a giveaway. So would highly recommend entering to win a free seat to that Deferred MBA bootcamp. This bootcamp is selling for near $1,200, so $1,199. And one of you is going to walk away with a free ticket to the bootcamp. So you must be live in attendance to win. And then the winner will be announced at the end of this session. So be sure to stay tuned in from start to finish. And that is the link right here that I'm hovering over to enter to win that free bootcamp. And Emma will also drop that link in the chat just to make it easy for you. But one of you is going to walk away as a lucky winner. So with that, so quick overview. Leland customers have accounted for 1/3 of Stanford and Harvard's deferred admits the last 2 years. These are real people, real faces of people that we've helped get into these top MBA programs. And it's not just Harvard and Stanford, but Wharton, Kellogg, Booth, Sloan, Columbia, Haas, Darden, you name it. We have helped thousands of individuals get into these top MBA programs, and many of them have been deferred applicants. So we would love to help you too. And yeah, we're really excited to share these free tips and advice through free events, but also happy to work with you one-on-one if that's something you're interested in. So yeah, now we're going to do a quick deep dive into deferred MBA, like the deferred MBA application. So with that, maybe Jerry, do you mind giving us just a quick overview of what deferred MBA programs even are for those that are not so familiar with them, but have maybe heard about them through the grapevine?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, a lot of the top MBA programs have started to offer this option, which is fantastic. And it's for folks that are now either in their senior year of undergrad or potentially in a joint program with maybe a master's where they're going to be graduating in 5 years. But essentially, you're still in school when you're now applying to get into an MBA program, but you don't come directly from where you are now. You have the chance to go off, work, get some great professional experience under your belt, knowing you've already been admitted to a great MBA program. And then every school is a little bit different. But after some period of working, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you then are able to come into the MBA program. So you've already gotten in years in advance. You get to go out into the world, have that experience, know that you're coming into an MBA program with, you'll be able to kind of keep up with everybody else who's there. But you have sort of the upside of being able to apply now, test now when you're kind of like right in the mindset of taking tests and can do the GRE or GMAT really well. And sort of it's behind you. You don't have to worry about applying later, when you're working, which is really tough to do.
Has joined the meeting.
Sorry. So yeah, so essentially like there's, some really good upsides to doing it now, but basically you have a chance to kind of apply as a current student and then find out you're admitted, go work, and then come back into the program later. And so, yeah, so that's kind of the big picture what it is.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the overview, Jerry. And there's a lot of reasons why you should apply to deferred MBA programs. Tim, not sure if you have any thoughts on this.
Yeah, I just like listening to Jared describe it, like I would say in a lot of ways it feels like a no-brainer, right? In terms of like you have like you sort of get in, you're in, you have like a path, a couple years down the road. I think it will help you in your career. You can like take some risks or try different things because you have, this coming. There's also a ton of opportunities to engage with the school before you go. So a lot of these schools will do like events for deferred folks, or you can get involved in the community even like before you go. So like huge opportunity. If something doesn't work out for a particular school and you want to come back afterward and apply again, like that's an option as well. So it's just a whole nother like set of at bats. But I mean, it's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, I think my two favorite, thank you for sharing. Yeah, just echo, it's a no risk shot at applying. So 2 shots on goal is better than 1. If you don't get in the first go round, AdComs encourage you to reapply down the road. Plus, your candidacy is going to be very different than what your deferred MBA candidacy was 3 or 4 years prior. And then the second thing that I love is the career option or flexibility. Quick example, I went to LinkedIn, really like good job coming out of school as in biz ops at LinkedIn, and the opportunity to join Leland in the very early stages came up. And I felt more empowered to take that risk, knowing that I had business school as a fallback plan versus like having to stay at LinkedIn and try to get promoted to associate and senior associate and manager prior to going to business school. So it does provide that career flexibility and allows you to try different things prior to business school. So when you go, you can either accelerate that or continue to try new things and pivot into something else. And then there's a bunch of different schools that offer deferred MBA programs. We kind of highlighted this, but all the top programs offer deferred MBA options. Deadlines are in the spring. So it's in that April timeframe. So if you're a final year undergrad or master's student, highly recommend starting the process now. If you're a junior, you should still start the process, but you're probably going to be starting with test prep and starting to think about some of the schools you'd be interested in. But there's a lot that goes into the application process. Ben, do you want to just give a quick overview of like everything it takes to put together an application and maybe just give us some quick thoughts where you'd recommend getting started?
Yeah, totally. And I think one of the hardest parts of this whole entire MBA process, to be admitted up front, is it is a lot. And I think most people underestimate just the number of specific, discrete things that you have to get done in order to successfully navigate this process. And to that end, I have 2 general things that I advise everyone that I work with. It's first, get started on that testing component as soon as you feel comfortable and try to get that out of the way. Order of operations of this stuff matters. And then secondly, think about the things that you can, in between or in addition to studying, let's say for the GRE or the GMAT, you kick off a few things in parallel. You figure out what your resume template is going to be. You start updating your experiences when you have relevant thoughts. You think about, for example, who are the types of people that might be my letters of recommend, like from serving as my letters of recommendation? Can I start those initial conversations? Because you don't know what people's timing looks like until you actually ask and get that process started. Overall, the things I recommend typically starting with are studying for the GMAT and GRE. Sequence, get it out of the way, get it done, get a strong score, build a base of confidence. 2, start getting familiar with some of the schools that you're excited about. Maybe getting a campus visit in there, maybe at least getting on the books with some current students or alumni, or maybe other people that you might know from your school that have gone on to go to those programs that you're targeting. And I think start to as well, like think about your general arc, your experience, your narrative. start writing out answers, even to some like silly cliched brainstorming questions. Like, what are the 3 times you're most proud of having impact? What do you care about the most in choosing your career, your path that you're going to take? Kickstart those initial thoughts and get working early, because this stuff takes time to marinate, and you can't just pound out that work. It's not like cramming for a test. It's actually something that's best done over the course of several months. So maybe we'll get to this a little bit later, guys, but I think something like a 6-month timeline feels like a really comfortable amount. And I always encourage people to get started early, because there are quite a lot of components. I'm not sure if that's exactly answering your question, Andrew, but let me know if I missed anything.
Yeah, no, that helps. And something that I want to just like hammer home too is like, it's total, like you should definitely be studying for the test. And that's where like a lot of your time's going to go if you haven't already taken it, but you should be working on your MBA application simultaneously. To Ben's point, like you need to be familiar with what are the essay prompts at the schools, and like start to like talk to friends and family about like who you are, what makes you unique, so you can start to ideate what you would potentially write about those things, or write about for each of those prompts. And so, yeah, just want to echo, like, it's not a take the test and then figure out the MBA application. You kind of have to think about both at the same time. But yeah, thanks, Ben. So yeah, would love to hear. So after that overview, kind of seeing some of the different parts of the application, obviously you've probably done some of your research on your own. Which part of the application process seems the most daunting to you? Just drop it in the chat. Essays, GMAT, test prep, recommenders. Cool. Yeah, all really good thoughts. For me, it was definitely the tests. I'm historically not a good test taker. The essays were also daunting to me, because it's hard to know what the AdCom's looking for and how you differentiate yourself. But yeah, essays and test prep are typically the most 2 common answers there. And that's again where like these Leland coaches would come into play, is we can help with both test prep, with essays, with letters of recommendation, with application strategy to interview prep. Like our coaches can help you with the entire process, right? And we have coaches at all different levels of expertise. We have coaches at all different price points. We have coaches that have expertise helping with different types of personas or backgrounds. And so I would highly, highly recommend scheduling some time with a member of our team. I often am hopping on a lot of those calls, providing tips and resources and advice from my own personal experience. And then I run the team, and I've trained them well on like what to expect and what you should be thinking about in terms of the deferred MBA application process. And then lastly, if you do talk with a member of our team, you get access to to exclusive deals and discounts. So any promotions or things that we're running on the website, our reps are familiar with it. And they would be more than happy to fill you in and let you know what's going on. So Emma will drop the link to schedule some time with our team in the chat. But highly, highly recommend setting up some time. I would love to chat with you. Rob's another rep, Maddie, some of the other members of my team would love to chat with you, and we're happy to help you get situated and help you get started on your deferred MBA application journey. So with that, we're going to dive into the panel and ask some additional questions. So maybe we start with you, Tim, and then we'll go Ben and then Jerry. What's your number 1 tip? So we're looking for your very best tip. What's your number 1 tip for those applying to deferred MBA programs?
Yeah, so I think probably the biggest tip I could give is to think about your audience in everything that you're working through. So you want to think about like everything sort of through the AdCom's lens. What do they care about? What are they looking to see? Like when you talk about the test or your GPA, or we've had questions even already in the chat around like the prestige of where you work. I think it can be really helpful to think about like, why do those things matter to the AdCom, and like what are the traits or attributes that they're really looking to see, and then how can you demonstrate those, or how can you exhibit those from your background. And maybe related to this, one mistake that I see a lot of applicants make is to sort of look at each individual piece of the application as like a distinct thing. Like, it's like, okay, I got to get my resume ready. Now I'm going to go and work on this essay, and I'll think about what matters to me, or I'll think about something I'm curious about. And, sort of tied to thinking about your audience, you want to think about your whole profile as a holistic profile that you can share with the admissions committee to tell a cohesive story that sort of checks all the boxes. So that's my biggest tip.
Jerry, do you want to jump in here? Or sorry, Ben.
Sure.
Oh yeah, Jerry, go
Yeah.
ahead. Ben, you can round it.
No, I think actually I kind of know what Ben's going to say, so I think his is better before mine.
Yeah. Well, part of this is because I told you, but also because I'm a broken record. Start early, guys. Start early. Life happens. There's a lot of classes. Social life senior year is like something you actually should be taking advantage of. There actually isn't another period in life quite like it. So please like have fun. To that end, space out and get started on your MBA applications, because there's this thing that seems to happen when I've been working with people where time looks so long when you're 6 months away, and then it looks so not long with 3 months away and 2 months away. You run out of time a lot faster than you think. And if things do actually heat up and something actually does come up that slows you off your process, you might not be able to recover from it fully. So start early, get moving on the test, and give yourself the time to do some of the deeper digging that's required to make this process really fulfilling and useful for yourself. So that's my number one.
And then I think as part sort of B to what Ben is saying, I think part of that work that you're starting early is that some of that introspective, sort of that self-reflection work that, a coach can certainly help you with, as well as others. But, this is some of the thinking that you do before you dive into like, what should I say in my essays? And what do I want my recommenders to talk about? Like, you need to do some of sort of the deep thinking. This is kind of the harder stuff, the less fun piece of it that people tend to kind of skip over. But, I would say, I would caution you not to kind of skip and just jump in, because I think, if you don't do this thinking ahead of time, really what I mean by that is like, you want to have a really super sort of clear story about like, here's what I'm all about. Here's what makes me interesting and special. Here's why I think a deferred MBA is right for me. All of those kinds of things. You want to have that really clear in your mind before you start to do a lot of work in the actual app. Because if you don't do that, I think your application is not going to be as strong as it could be. And that's going to come through. So that's sort of my part B to what, Ben was saying in terms of starting early.
Yeah. So again, if you're a final year undergrad, senior, or master's student, it's November 12th. Do not start test prep and start your MBA applications in January. Start now. Do yourself a favor. If you haven't already started, start now. Do yourself a favor and do that. Studying for the exam is not super fun. It's often dry and boring, and you just have to force yourself to do it. So start now, and starting means sign up for an official exam, right? And like throw it on the calendar so you have a date to work towards, right? Or like schedule an intro call or book a session with a coach to figure out like what your timeline or strategy is and how you should approach this entire process, right? Like there's things that you can do to kind of motivate you and help you get started. And I highly, highly recommend getting started as soon as possible. If you're outside of if you're a junior or sooner, right, you can start studying for the exam now, right? Or you can start digging into some of these MBA programs and talking to students and alum. You can do some planning sessions to make sure you're participating in the right extracurriculars and have the right activities and interests and things, So there's a lot that you can be doing, and the sooner you start, the better off you'll be and the better outcome you'll have. We kind of talked a little bit about kind of where you would start the process. Ben, you kind of shared a little bit about that, which was helpful. Jerry, I don't know if there's anything you'd add on this question.
I think like when I'm, working with folks who are applying, I kick off, and I think a lot of coaches do a similar exercise, sort of kick off with some sort of discovery, where this was kind of a little bit of what I was alluding to earlier, right? Like asking some tough questions about, so that you kind of can create that narrative. So like, things like what are your, core values? What is one defining moment in your life? Who are the most important people in your life and what have they taught you? Sort of, some of this stuff that you don't think about on a day-to-day basis, right? So that's usually the first thing I do with folks is I ask them to complete this discovery doc. And then it kind of starts getting sort of all their brain working and sort of their ideas around like, what is important to me? What am I about? And then once they do that, we have sort of a call to go through it all, to discuss it, like, share with each other kind of, here are some commonalities I was seeing. Here's some threads that I'm seeing in your background and your history. This is kind of a narrative that's coming together. Like, does this resonate with you? And then like together we start to craft that narrative, that story. And then usually, really early on, some of this initial meeting, we're talking about school choice, that was kind of mentioned earlier, like what schools are you really focused on? Have you done the homework around really understanding what they're all about and if you're a fit or not? Recommender choice is a big topic to discuss early on because you want to give your recommenders lots of time to prep. So we talk through who might you approach? Who are the better ones? We kind of talk through your career goals. Is this clearly defined or do you need to do a little bit more work around this? Because that's going to come into play when you start writing your essays. And sort of we do all this work, to kick things off. And then certainly there's, usually we'll work together on that. Let's create a schedule so that like we're keeping you on track. If you're applying to 3 schools or 4 schools, it's a lot to manage. So part of, what a coach can do is also help keep you on track, like give you a timeline and a schedule to make sure you hit all your dates. So I think that's kind of some of what goes on in that kickoff process.
Cool. Yeah. Love that. And yeah, this is like, you have to be super self-reflective through this process. You're going to talk to your parents, your friends, your family members, your coworkers. You really have to do some deep digging to figure out like who you are, what your values are, what experiences you've had in your life that make you unique. And a coach is really good at asking those questions, to like do that deeper digging. And then they're really good at helping consolidate. Okay, here's all the different areas or experiences you've had. How do we like bring this together with like themes and sub themes, and how do we tell this like cohesive story or narrative that resonates well with an adcom and or former adcom like Jerry, which is awesome. So thank you for sharing. And then obviously differentiating yourself, obviously there's like a lot of different types of candidates and that are applying to these programs and different qualities that these schools are looking for. Ben, do you mind sharing what kinds of candidates or qualities these schools are looking for in deferred applicants?
Yeah, the things that come to mind might be a little bit different than I think people initially conceptualize in their head. They kind of maybe, I don't know if anybody here is like me, I kind of had this imaginary super person applying to MBA programs that I was constantly going to be compared to. And that was the total wrong way to think about the process. I also think people are a little bit too quick to say that adcoms or processes are just everyone's getting grouped into buckets and quotas and all that. I think the process is so much more than that in terms of evaluation. And so it should be so much more than that in terms of how you think about designing your application. I think the kinds of qualities that are looked for as a result are things more like consistency and commitment, evidence that your future is linked to the experience in your past, clear passions and cohesion around some of the things that you've done professionally, extracurricularly, etc. And I also think, frankly, like a professionalism to some degree. There's no spelling errors. There's no like issues with formatting. Everything's buttoned up. You maximize the use of every single part of your application. And it's clear that you've put thought, and that's where I think thoughtful probably might be another word that they're looking for. People who can reflect on the things that they have done, why they did them, and the lessons that they can take away from it. And the ability to articulate that in a clear and compelling way will separate you. So I think that's a little bit of the flavor of what MBA programs are looking for in deferred apps.
Love that. Thanks for sharing, Ben. Jerry, I'm just going to circle back to you being like the founder of the 2+2 program at HBS. I feel like you're well positioned to answer this if you don't mind sharing your thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways it's kind of interesting because it's not terribly different than what they're looking for in, regular MBA candidates, right? Like a lot of what Ben just said, right, holds true for regular MBA candidates as well as deferred. So, it's all the things that he said and all those kind of typical things that MBA programs care about, right? Like they want to see those super strong academics. They want to make sure you're going to be able to handle sort of the rigor of the classroom, right? They want to see that leadership experience, you know, whether that's, you know, in clubs or extracurriculars. They want to understand sort of how you lead. They want to know that you can work on a team and collaborate and that you can make an impact when you're doing that. They want people who are curious, who have a lot of different interests and, you know, care a lot about what's going on in the world, right? And who are paying attention. They want people who have drive, who have done a lot and have goals to do a lot more. You know, they take advantage of every opportunity. So, you know, those are the kind of folks. And then I think if you drill down a little, you know, more, I think you can also get a little bit of a flavor by school, you know, the kind of folks that they, you know, might even have a slight difference or a slight preference for. So, you know, HBS, for example, sort of is pretty clear cut. They say right out front, like, we have a preference for applicants from, you know, lower socioeconomic backgrounds, people who are first in family to go to college, you know, applicants who are heading to underrepresented industries, whether that's like, you know, an entrepreneur or operating companies or technical, you know, jobs and roles, you know, and then there's like GSB that says, hey, we're happy to look at everyone. We don't really have a preference. So I think, you know, understanding kind of the schools, just so that doesn't mean that you can't apply if you have a more sort of a more highly represented background. Like if you know, had a business admin background or a major and you're going to work in consulting, that's okay. It doesn't mean you can't apply, you know, to an HBS. It just means you need to know that going in. I think that's helpful because that helps you figure out, okay, maybe I focus a little bit more on some other things that differentiate me versus things that I know they're going to be seeing in other applicants. So, you know, that's another thing that you want to do when you're doing some of your research, just to understand sort of those slight differences in schools. But the core things that I mentioned and that Ben were talking about all hold true. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Super great answers. Really appreciate you sharing. We're going to get into just tactical pieces of the application. So we're going to start with resumes. Tim, do you mind sharing what the primary differences are between an MBA resume and like your typical job resume?
Yeah. So it's a completely different audience, right? And they're using the resume for, you know, a totally different purpose. So in a job, right, you want to highlight relevant skills and kind of show your fit within a particular role that they have in their mind. I think, you know, to my very first tip, you know, I would think about how the resume gets used in the application process. And there's usually like sort of two ways, right? One is they're trying to understand your career. They're trying to understand what like where you want to go with your career and how that sort of ties to what you've studied and sort of what you've done to date, right? And then I think the second is to get to know you, right? They want to see like, okay, what, you know, what leadership experiences has this person had? What impact have they had? You know, why have they made the decisions they made? And even like, you know, what are some of your interests or hobbies or like things that can start a conversation in an interview? For a lot of schools, you know, when you do the interview, your resume is all that that interviewer will have seen about you. So that's sort of how they get to know you and craft the questions that they're going to ask in the interview. So I would say, like, how does that flow through? Like, you want to think about, you know, demonstrated impact, not just like, you know, words like, oh, this was significant, but like, you know, unbiased, you know, credible signals of the impact that you've had. You want to show like a clear sort of deliberate decisions that you've made and how that sort of, you want to connect it to your career goals that you have after. And then I would say, another super important piece is just having your personality come through a bit, whether it's like hobbies at the end or some of the extracurriculars that you're involved in, so that they feel like they're kind of getting a holistic sense of who you are.
Awesome. Yeah, all really good thoughts. Echo the holistic point as well as making sure that every like bullet point within your resume shows impact and why they should care. The two other things I would add is strip any industry jargon, just simplify, right? If you come from a technical background, these adcoms aren't going to know all the different, like, I don't want to sell them short. That many of them probably do know the programming languages, but probably are less familiar with them and the different types of technologies and maybe different acronyms that you use. So be sure to strip that out. And then the second thing that I would add is build out your education experience. Like how you were involved on campus is kind of like a proxy of how you would get involved on campus at these business schools. So make sure that you show like club participation and other participation while on campus to show that you do care about the student body, you do care about the student culture community that you're a part of. And if you do set foot on their campus, you'll make a difference there as well. Ben, over to you. How do I get powerful letters of recommendation as a current student?
Yeah. I think one thing I'll just focus on, because it's something that somehow isn't often brought up in all these, do great work, like consistently. And by that, I mean, like, put in the extra time during your internship or job, early work that you're doing, go the extra mile with every single professor that, lends a hand in mentorship, all that. Anyone who is seeing you in a work capacity, don't see as like a potential thing to transact with for a letter of recommendation down the line, but you do great work for them, come what may, I think is a good attitude to have. Be resourceful, take initiative in every single thing that you decide to put your time into. I think that's just the actual stuff that would make someone want to write a letter for you, and ultimately the pieces of evidence that would serve as the body of the letter of recommendation itself. So I don't know why, I just feel like that point often gets overlooked.
Awesome. And then just tactically, Ben, I know who I want to write my letters. Like, how do I navigate that process?
If it's somebody on your campus or in the area, I would give them a call, set up some time, go grab coffee, be direct, talk about what that would entail. If you're writing, from someone from work and they maybe live in a different state than you, shoot them a really nice but simple and direct email. That was just like, hey, I got a lot out of working with you. I felt like you saw me grow quite a bit in this role. I'm really excited about applying to business school. Would you be open to writing me a letter of recommendation? It can be as simple as that. I would probably include, a little bit less just straightforward language in there too, just depending on your relationship. But I think just make that ask. Don't like couch it behind some giant, news feed wall of information. And then the ask is like buried at the last like eighth of the email. Like, be upfront. And I think the conversation often if that person wants to write for you, they're often thrilled to do it.
Awesome. Yeah, all really good thoughts. Be direct, do good work. Appreciate those insights. And then, Jerry, when you work with clients, is there anything you do special, like maybe put together some resources or materials to help them, like help the recommenders through the process?
Yes, definitely. And I think, Leland has some of this stuff available to everyone too that you can access, which is great. But I think there is, once you get that initial yes from them and they're in, then you really want to make sure you do some work to prepare your recommenders, right? So, obviously you're picking people that really kind of believe strongly in you going to business school, that they are ready to, that they are like fully bought into this, right? And they really want you to succeed. So you want to prepare them as best they can to make this as easy as possible for them, right? Because you're asking them for a big favor. So when I'm working with clients, we'll put together, a document that kind of just lays out the logistics of this, right? So, hey, I'm applying to these schools. The deadlines are this date. Here are the pieces that I'm going to ask you to complete. Each of the schools is a little bit different, but you're going to need to enter a portal, blah, 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 all the like logistical stuff. And then you get into the sort of more, interesting stuff, which is like, hey, here's what I'm going to be talking about, in my essays. Here's my story. I would love for you to be able to reinforce this. Here are the strengths that maybe you can kind of highlight. Here's a reminder of projects or things that we worked on together. Again, you're just making it as easy as possible for them. You're not writing it for them. You're not telling them what to write, but you want to just make it so that they look at this and they are ready to go. And so that they don't have to, be racking their brain about what to write. So you're kind of putting it all together, one document, not too long, but you're laying everything out, giving them some ideas, giving them deadlines so that, they're not doing it at the very last second. And then you're going to follow up with them as you go, right? So, hey, do you have any a couple weeks later, did you get that from me? Have any questions? Anything I can clarify? And then again, later on down the road, like making sure, have they submitted? You want to keep on top of it to make sure this all goes smoothly. But I think doing that preparation, in the early days, once you've gotten the yes from them, I think is super important.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jerry. And that is something that I did with my recommenders when I applied to deferred MBA programs and found it super helpful. And also just showed my recommenders that I had this high level of commitment. I was taking this process very seriously, and they also took it seriously. So highly recommend putting together like a 1 or 2 page document outlining kind of what they're getting themselves into and what you want them to cover. And we have a recommender prep template that we'll be sharing with you this week as well. So we've had like 50 or 60 people join since I shared this giveaway. So just wanted to relay it one more time. We are running a deferred MBA bootcamp January 13th to February 5th. It's 8 live sessions. They're 90-minute sessions apiece. We're going to have phenomenal coaches like Jerry, Tim, and Ben who will be teaching each of these sessions, but we're going to be very tactical. We're going to get into application strategy, so that'll touch resumes, application strategy, timeline, school selection, etc. We're going to get into the weeds with letters of rec. So we're going to answer the tough questions like, who should I ask to write my letters? How do I prepare them? We'll supply you with your prep template, etc. We're going to do a deep dive into essays. It's particularly with Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton, which are the 3 most sought after programs. And then we'll do like office hours and be able to answer a bunch of questions. As part of the boot camp, you also get access to Leland Plus, which is our content library. We have sample admit essays, video guides, and other material in there. Anyways, here is the link to win a free admission to the Deferred MBA bootcamp. Be sure to fill that out, and we're going to be announcing the winner in about 15-ish minutes from now. So be sure to apply to win a free seat to that bootcamp. And yeah, here's like the quick overview of the sessions. As you can kind of see, kind of what I articulated or mentioned, and then here's kind of like a quick overview as well. You get a ton of value. We've estimated about $5,000 of coaching value, and you get it at the price of $1,200 if you book. We're having a special discount that's going on for all Deferred MBA week attendees. So if you do want to get access to the bootcamp at $600, if you apply to win the giveaway, we will send you a text with the discount code, and that offer expires soon. So if you do want to get it at a much cheaper cost, at 50% off, be sure to fill out that bootcamp giveaway here. And again, Emma will drop it in the chat, and you'll be able to get the bootcamp at a much cheaper cost. Okay. And then now going back to essays. So we've touched base on resumes, letters of rec. Want to do a quick overview on essays. Tim, do you mind sharing how you'd go about approaching the application essays?
Yeah. So maybe just a few thoughts here I'll share. The first is, just kind of to emphasize why the essays are so important, right? This is your chance to sort of tell your story. I think a lot of applicants, I certainly felt this way when I was applying, like lots of pressure to sort of be that perfect applicant and kind of have all these things. And this is really probably the best place for you to just sort of like make it real for them and help them really understand who you are as a person. So in thinking about the essays, I would split it into 2 groups, right? One thing that they're trying to understand is, what are your career goals? Like, what do you want to do after an MBA? What do you want to do, long term? And then how does that connect to what you've studied? How does that connect to the internships that you've had and experiences you've had? And one piece that, I talk to my clients a lot about is then like what I call the problem statement of your application, which is like, why do you even need an MBA to sort of connect the dots between those 2 things? What are you hoping to achieve? How do you know that this is the right time for you to go? And then that problem statement can sort of feed into why this particular school is best positioned to help you accomplish those goals and prepare for your career. So that's on like the career sort of professional side. You want to build a really cohesive narrative across those different points. And then there's a lot of essays that are focused more on sort of the personal narrative. Like, you could think of GSB's What Matters Most to You, or Booth has a question around, we want to get to know you personally, outside of your career, or even HBS, like what you're curious about, right? And how that's informed your growth. And here, it's a good opportunity for you to show like not just formative experiences from your life, but then like sort of what you learned from those, how those shaped your character, how those inform like the values that you carry with you, and how that sort of makes up, how you would show up on campus, how you would contribute to the community. And so those are some of the things I'd be thinking about on more of those personal ones.
Awesome. Really great insights. Thanks for sharing, Tim. And there's a lot of like mistakes or pitfalls that applicants fall into. I think for me, mine was regurgitating my resume in essay form. And my coach that I hired and worked with, like, kind of told me that the hard way, and I had to rework everything. But maybe Ben, other common mistakes or pitfalls that you've seen that applicants should avoid?
Yeah, I mean, I say that there's like a lot of stylistic things I think people do that are just choices that you cannot make in this writing process. Do definitely write the way that you speak. Communicate on paper in a way that a real human being would understand it and be like, oh, that person, I hear their voice, I understand what they're cutting across. I could imagine being in a conversation with them. Get rid of jargon, get rid of industry speak, get rid of anything that's like, if I have to use a thesaurus, like you've already lost me. So that enough as a writing choice is I find tough. But again, it's something you can choose. I also think just thinking conceptually about what an essay is as some sort of like exercise and like whimsical literary fiction. Like, yes, you can talk about things and describe them using language, but it's really important that you treat this in some ways as like almost like writing a thesis with a personal statement flair to it. You're not writing a thesis stylistically, but you need to put forward a vision for who you are, and you need to substantiate that vision with examples from your real life. And so there is an organization to this. It's not just like some sort of word dump that you do like once a month. Like you actually have to care about this, and you have to put effort into it. So those are some pitfalls I think I've seen come up.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Jerry, anything on essays, pitfalls, kind of anything you'd recommend in terms of approaching them that hasn't been covered thus far?
I think most things have been covered really well. I would just say to sort of have a laser focus on the individual questions. There will be some overlap with school to school, but they are different enough where you really want to make sure you're paying attention to actually what's being asked and that you're fully answering all the parts of the question. They're basically giving you a message in their question, right? They are telling you, this is what we care about, right? This is what we're looking for. So pay attention to what they're saying and make sure that your response sort of makes sense given what they are telling you they care about. So I just think you want to make sure you're answering it fully, sort of and hitting all the important pieces. I think to your point, Andrew, that was going to be my thing. You stole it, which was like rehashing your resume. And I think that is super, super typical. Like the first go around, the first draft, that's often what I'll see is people, you feel like this need to like, I need to reiterate my accomplishments. That's kind of your initial gut, right? But really the essays, that's not what they're about. They see your accomplishments there. They're going to hear about on your resume. They're going to hear about your accomplishments to your recommenders. This is the only shot you have to, like Ben said, to share with them your voice. Right. So you want to really, it's sort of extracting, the what is on the resume, but the why and like the learnings and the takeaways, that's where you can make it interesting. And that's what you're putting, into those essays.
Yeah, love it. Again, it's a super reflective process. These essays do not come easy. You're going to write a lot of drafts. You're going to get frustrated. And so, yeah, having someone who knows what it takes to write these essays is super helpful. And Tim, Ben, and Jerry, and many of the other coaches on our platform have done this hundreds of times over. So, yeah, you can make it really easy and hire someone to help you out, and it'll make all the difference. We've covered a lot of ground. So, obviously, we haven't been able to do everything in this hour session, but would love to just hear your final tip you have for those in the audience that are pursuing deferred MBA programs. So, maybe we go Tim, Ben, and Jerry. And if you don't mind sharing your final tip, that'd be awesome.
Sure. I think maybe so. My final tip would be I have seen, in working with countless applicants, I will say it takes a decent amount of work, and you kind of have to be willing to put in the work. So they're looking for people who, being very insightful about what you bring to the community, why the program even matters to you. Like I see so many applicants just calling out attributes of the program in their essays, but not really thinking about like why that sort of matters to you or how you would take advantage of it. And so I think you just like I think my final tip would be, to hold yourself to sort of that high standard of insightful thinking in everything that you present. And I think that's why a coach can be so effective, right? Because then you have somebody sort of holding you accountable to that level of insight. But whether it's through a coach or whatever process works best for you, like you have to sort of get to that deeper level to really connect with them.
Cool. Over to you, Ben.
Final tip. I think I agree with Tim's point big time around volume of work. I just think it's really actually a helpful, like, reflective set of exercises that you'll go through when you do this process. Don't underestimate. I've had a lot of people who are going to GSB, HBS, all over the place, who've written me kind of like, hey, I appreciated now the thoughtfulness we put into the process. And maybe part of that personally is just the way that I do it, at least it kind of helps them feel like they can really envision where they're going to be before they get there, and help them think about how to be intentional and make the most of their time. And you know what? Like, people talk about trying to figure out where they want to go. Well, taking stock of all that, articulating it, putting it down on paper, there isn't a study out there that shows that's unhealthy. So I think it's worth just thinking about the fact that you're going to get a lot of other value in this process with a coach, even if you do it yourself, by forcing yourself to do the work, sure, but also just like you're actually going to do some useful reflection that you probably should do even more than just in an MBA process.
Yeah, and my last tip is just to, not be afraid to show personality. I think, sometimes these schools can feel intimidating. They're important places. They have, amazing people that are graduating from them, and they can feel like a little bit, not like there's not real people who are there, and that the AdCom are not real people, but they are. And like, these schools are looking for people, who in a holistic way. So I think that means that, like, it's okay to show personality. It's good to show some personality. You want to show them that you are a full person, beyond sort of what's on your resume. The more they get to know you, the more they sort of walk away from, looking at your application and having a fairly good sense for, like, here's what this person is all about. Here's what they care about. I get a sense for who they are. That's what you want, right? So, at the end of the whole thing, if you have a friend read it or someone who knows you well and says, hey, does my personality come through? Does this sound like me? Then you've done the good job. If the person says, you know what, I don't know, somebody else could have written this. It's not, I don't hear you in this. Then you're sort of missing the mark a little bit. So, I think sharing your true self, bringing your sort of whole self to this process really is valuable. And the schools love to see that.
Awesome. All incredible tips. Thank you so much for all the great insights you've shared. My final thing that I'll say is just commit. So if you're thinking about applying, just commit to applying and put in the time and effort. There's a lot of people that drag their feet waiting for the test score, drag their feet debating whether or not they want to apply, and then it's often too late. And it does require time and effort and hours and reflection to put together a really good application. So if you are interested in getting an MBA, commit and apply through the deferred process. I'm a huge promoter of it. So with that, here's our final word. We're also going to be announcing the giveaway winner. So excited to announce that. But can we give a big round of applause to Tim, Jerry, and Ben? Thank you so much for joining the panel. Emma or Amelia, I know we've got a couple people running the chat. They'll be dropping their profiles. Highly recommend clicking on them, read about their backgrounds. You can also reach out to them and chat with them if you're interested in working with them one-on-one. They are highly sought after. I would imagine that their books of business for sure will be filled by the end of the year, if not sooner. So if you are interested in working with one of them one-on-one, highly recommend reaching out. There's also some discount codes, as you can see. We'll be emailing those out, so you don't need to worry or have to like copy those down. But yeah, huge round of applause to Tim, Jerry, and Ben. Really appreciate your time and for you sharing your insights. And now time to announce the winner of the giveaway. Give me 1 second. I got it here. It is Samir Chowdhury. Apologies if I mispronounced that, but congrats, you're the winner. We have your email, so we will we'll email you. But yeah, congrats, you are the winner of the boot camp. And as a reminder, if you did enter to win the boot camp, you will have access to that 50% off discount code for the boot camp. So be sure to use that. That will expire. So if you are interested, you should have gotten a text to use that. Would love for you to join us in the new year. And then last plug, I run the team that hops on the calls with customers. We'd love to get to know you. We'd love to hear about your background. We'd love to answer your questions about the deferred MBA application process. We also have access to exclusive deals and discounts. So be sure to schedule some time with our team. We'd love to chat with you, help you get started, make sure you have all the tools and resources needed to get into a top program. And with that, thank you so much for joining, and I hope that you all have a good night. And thanks again to our panelists. We'll see ya.
Thank you all.